Hello friends, welcome to Alibro's EduSoft Free Education YouTube channel. Today we are going to discuss Business Studies Plus 1 first chapter, Nature and Purpose of Business, Part 7. Let's get into the video. So, in this we are going to discuss about the term trade. What is trade and its classification? Trade is the central activity of commerce. Trade can be defined as the buying and selling of goods and services between persons or group of persons in a particular place called market or the place which is defined. It is the central activity which is happening in the commerce, so it can also be called as the nucleus of commerce. What does it refers to? Trade refers to the purchase and sale of goods. Purchase as well as sale is carried out in trade. It helps the movement of goods from the producer to the ultimate consumers. The movement of goods from producers to the ultimate consumers is facilitated in trade. Between the producer and consumers, there may be many parties who are involved in trade, like the manufacturers, wholesalers, retailers, etc. But trade, it maintains a relationship between the producer and the consumers, who are the final or the ultimate ones. They purchase goods from the producer in bulk quantities and sell them to consumers according to their requirements. The producer or the manufacturer may be preparing the goods or producing the goods in bulk quantities, and they are selling those goods to the consumers according to their requirements. It is not in a manner of bulk production and bulk purchasing. It is according to the requirements which are set by the consumers. And this trade, it can be considered as a connecting link between producer and consumer. In the absence of trade, it would not be possible to undertake production of activities on a large scale. Trading activities are mostly carried out in a bulk manner. So, in the absence of this trade, the production activities as well as the manufacturing activities involved in this trade, it cannot be exercised in a bulk manner. Here it shows the chart of trade. In the before section of the video, we have explained about the classification of trade, industry and commerce. Here it is a small description of the chart which shows the classification of trade and its related factors. Trade, it is divided into home trade and foreign trade. Home trade is also known as domestic trade. It can also be called as internal trade. And next is a foreign trade. Foreign trade, it is also known as international trade or global trade. Home trade, it can be divided into two, wholesale trade and retail trade. Likewise, the foreign trade, it can be divided into import trade, export trade and end-report trade. So this is a classification of trade and its activities. Now we are moving on to the explanation of what each term means. We have explained about the meaning and definition of trade. Next is internal trade. Internal trade means that it is the purchase and sale of goods within the country. The purchasing and the sale will be made within the country. The production process, the manufacturing process and the process after its manufacturing, the consuming process, all it happens in the domestic country itself. And the players of trade will also be involved in the domestic country too. Internal trade may be of two types. It can be wholesale trade or retail trade. What is meant by wholesale trade? Wholesale trade or the wholesaler who is involving in the wholesale trade Actually, he is the connecting link between the producer and retailer. Goods and services are produced and they are given to the retailer in huge quantity, because the producer, he need to exercise large scale economies. So what he does is he makes bulk production of goods and services and he transfers that to the retailer, that too in bulk quantities. What happens when the producer gives the products in bulk is that they could exercise economies of scale, which means they could minimize the cost of production also by earning more profit. Minimizing cost of production and earning more profit, that is maximizing the profit or output, is the key theme of the wholesale traders. He purchases huge quantity of goods from producer. Then what he does is, wholesaler, he purchases this high quantity of goods and he stores it in warehouses or in godowns, big godowns, and sells it in small quantities to the retailers. So these wholesalers, they are the middlemen or the connecting link between the producer and the retailer. He purchases goods from the producer and gives it in small quantities to the retailer. The difference is that the purchasing between the producer and wholesaler is of bulk nature, and the selling between the retailer and the wholesaler is of according to the requirements, which is in retail nature. First is of wholesale nature and the second is of retail nature. Next is the retail trade. Retail trade is the connecting link between wholesaler and the ultimate consumer, which is the second process which I explained in the wholesale trade. In retail trade, wholesaler, after purchasing bulk quantities from the producer, what he does is he gives retailing for the retailers, and this retailers, they buy from wholesaler and gives the product to the ultimate consumer. Retailer purchases goods from wholesaler and sells them to the ultimate consumer. A retailer is the last link in the chain of distribution. So we have already discussed that there is a proper channelization in the distribution of goods and services from the producer to the final consumers. Also we have studied that trade, it is the link between or the relation between the producers and the consumer. Between producer and consumer, there are various parties who are involved in the activities of trade, and this retailer becomes the last link in the chain of distribution. After the retailer, it is a consumer who is the ultimate consumption happens in the chain of distribution. So next is about the external trade. External trade or foreign trade means buying and selling of goods and services between two countries. Internal trade is the purchasing and sale that happens in the domestic country or internally, and this external trade or foreign trade, it is the buying and selling of goods and services that happens between two countries. This external trade can be of following types. First one is import trade. If we are purchasing goods from another country that we are not insufficient of, then that trade is called import trade. The same country will be the export of making some goods to other countries, and that trade is called export trade. If a particular country is a producer of certain products and that country may be using that products for the use of that country Also, the surplus may be exported to other countries who are in sufficient of that product. So, there comes the two trade, import trade and export trade. In simple meaning, we can say that if goods are purchased from another country, it is called import trade, and if goods are sold to another country, it is called export trade. In between this import trade and export trade, there is another category of trade called end-report trade. What is end-report trade? When goods are imported from foreign countries with the object of re-exporting them to some other countries. That is, when goods are imported from foreign countries, that there happens an import trade with the object of re-exporting that to some other countries. That is, importing and exporting together takes place in end-report trade. And that kind of trade is called end-report trade. An example can be called for end-report trade. Indian firms importing goods from Germany and Japan. Indian firms, some goods may be insufficient in our country, and we may be exporting those goods from Germany and Japan. And after its import from Germany and Japan, Indian firms, what they do is they re-export the goods to Nepal. Nepal, they also may be insufficient of that particular goods, and Indian firms, they export those goods from Germany and Japan to Nepal. And this import as well as exporting together carried out is known as end. So, this is about the classification of trade, internal trade and external trade. In internal trade, there is wholesale trade and retail trade, and in external trade, it is import trade, export trade and end-report trade. So, in this, we have explained about the trade and its related sectors, also its subcategories. In the next section, we will move on to the second term in the equation, auxiliaries to trade. So if you have any doubts regarding this section, kindly email which is given below. Also like, share and subscribe to Alibros EduSoft Free Education YouTube channel. Thank you.